Thank you, musicians, for that song. And go ahead and take your Bibles and open them to 1 Samuel. We're moving right along here in this book and into some interesting material we probably need reminded of. As I was studying this week, I don't remember what VBS it was, but I think it was last year. One of the lessons was on this chapter. Y'all remember Dagon? Remember that? Yeah. So that's what this is about in chapter 5. In chapter 4, a quick summary. It had been foretold that Eli and his sons would die. And in chapter 4, we have this war, but a couple of battles are recorded for us in chapter 4. And the Israelites lost a battle, and the ark was captured. And when news of the captured ark reached Eli, he falls back, breaks his neck, dies. And then another sort of strange turn of events is near the end of the chapter when Phinehas, which is one of Eli's sons, his wife, goes into premature labor, and she dies while giving birth to this child Ichabod. And so the captured ark had some implications there for those two people. Phinehas and Hophni died in battle. They died as they were surrounding the ark, and I think it says 30,000 Israelites also die in this battle. So that's chapter 4. The ark has been captured. You look there at the last verse 22, and she said, "The glory has departed from Israel, for the ark of God has been captured." So, I guess, hey, we throw up our hands and it's all over. Except for the fact that would be wrong, because it's not all over. So I made the point towards the end of the message last week or observation, I guess, is that we hear about the word of the Lord coming through Samuel. Samuel is mediating the word of the Lord, and they have this meeting, but I don't see Samuel involved at all. And so it doesn't seem like that they consulted God before they decide to take the ark out into the battlefield. I'm not sure that God wanted them to take the ark out in the battlefield. We just don't know, because it doesn't seem there was any consultation with the Lord about that. What is the Lord's will? I don't see that in chapter 4. It just seems like they're acting on their own, just acting on their own will. So there you go. Chapter 5, it talks about the rejection of God. The Philistines, and I want to make a couple of remarks about them. I'm no expert with the Philistine background, but from what I've read is that the people in the Philistine Empire were Semitic, which means that they were indigenous to that area. But the royal families, the people who controlled the government, the aristocracy, were from Southern Europe and had migrated there by ship and had settled along that coast. It's down there where Gaza is now. And so if you're familiar with your geography, it's kind of close to where Egypt intersects right there at the curve of where the Mediterranean and the continent of Africa comes around, where the Nile River and all that. So the people there are Aegean, is what they're called, Aegean Sea. They're like Greek people who have migrated there and set up a government. And so we're going to look at some of the players and characters in the government of the Philistines in upcoming chapters, but I just wanted you to kind of have a little idea about who the Philistines are. So they are just like all the other nations around. They are just full of idolatry, full of pagan worship and everything but God. They're really superstitious people too. Much like what idolatry brings to the table is a lot of superstition, silly things like don't step on the crack, you'll break your mama's back, dumb stuff like that, like rabbit foots and rabbit feet, I guess. Foots is not a word, is it? Lucky Charms. Y'all like Lucky Charms? That's a good cereal, isn't it? Silly stuff. Wear the right shirt during the football game so we can win. Sit in a certain place. All that silly stuff. That's idolatry. That's superstition. It doesn't amount to nothing. That's how pagans are. And so their idea was, and this was a common practice for militaries to go and fight. Well, the big prize would be capture their God. Capture their God and then bring it back and put it in our temple. And so that's exactly what they do with the Ark of God. They take the Ark of God. It's a trophy. It's an accomplishment. And so now they've got their God and they've got other nations' gods. So from where their standpoint is we've got it all covered. We've got our God, we've got their God, we've got all the gods that hear God, their God, everywhere, God. We got it. And so we're in good shape now. That's their mindset. Now, that's not true. And I don't think that's true. But from their perspective, that's what they were doing, is trying to cover all their bases. Here's the sad thing about it is there's a lot of people nowadays that think the same way. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people now that have made a profession of faith just to cover all the bases. Hey, just in case, and tell me this is belief, and I'll tell you you got some issues. That's not belief. Belief is not, well, I'll walk the aisle and get baptized just to make sure. Because if the Lord comes back tomorrow, I want to be ready. Well, I'm sorry, but that's really not belief. That's really not faith. That's just mechanical doing something. That's just going through the motions. That's fake is what it is. That's just I'm checking the boxes. So being saved is more than just checking the boxes. And so the only other thing I know what to call it is just idolatry. Because you're really not believing in the Lord for your salvation, if that's what it is to you. So after the Philistines defeat Israel in battle, they take the ark back to their cities. They take him, first of all, to Ashdod. Look at the first thing I want you to see is his superiority, and I'm talking about Yahweh's superiority. The superiority of God. Yahweh's superiority. So you say, well, man, they just lost. Is God really superior? Is Yahweh is he the mighty God of the world? Because his people were just defeated in a one-sided defeat. They were just routed on the battlefield. The ark is gone. Why didn't Yahweh put a stop to this? Because he didn't want to. And because he has a greater plan. So let's see what happens. It says they brought it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. And in verse 2, they placed it in their temple next to their god Dagon. And by the way, Dagon was a very popular god in that day, about as popular as Baal or Baal. We say Baal in Arkansas, but it's Baal. And that's a very popular god, a Canaanite god. And so Dagon was very, very well known in that time period. Verse 3, you see what happens. They set the ark next to Dagon, but when the people of Ashdod arose early in the morning, verse 3, there was Dagon fallen on its face to the earth before the ark of the Lord. Well, the idea here is that Dagon is falling down in submission. Dagon has fallen down and he is in a worship posture to the ark of God. And I think it should go without saying, that the ark of God, that's not where God is, but that's a symbolic representation of his presence, the very presence of God. And I hate to say this because I guess it's a poor way of saying it, but I think you'll understand what I mean by it. So don't take it all out of context, please. Give me a little bit of grace. If anyone should understand what a representation is, it would be an idolater. Okay? And so when they look at the ark, they are looking at, this is an image or a representation of Yahweh. Okay? So I'm a little hesitant to put it that way because I don't want anyone getting the wrong idea about what I believe about the ark. But this is not a difficult concept for anyone to understand. It's a representation. We believe Yahweh is a literal God, a literal being, a literal living God. I'm not sure what they thought about Dagon, but I know what we believe about our God. But here you have Dagon fallen on his face. So they took Dagon and they set him up in his place again. So notice in verse 4, it says they arose the next morning, and there was Dagon fallen on its face to the ground before the ark of the Lord. The head of Dagon and both the palms of its hands were broken off on the threshold. Only Dagon's torso was left of it. And so here you have, this is not only has he been fallen down in a prostrate position, a submissive position, but also he has no hands. His head's been cut off. He has been mutilated. He is out of commission. It's just another symbol, another representation of the powerlessness of their God, Dagon, in the presence of Yahweh. And so in verse 5, it says, therefore neither the priests of Dagon nor any who come into Dagon's house tread on the threshold of Dagon and Ashdod to this day. I wish verse 5 would have been a lot different. And I think you'll understand why. Because what verse 5 proves is they're not buying into Yahweh at all. Because they're still as superstitious as the day is long. They ain't going to step on the threshold because that's where their god Dagon fell. So now it's a venerated, it's a sacred thing. Don't step on your mama's back, you'll break your mama's back, all that silly stuff. We're not going to step on the threshold because that's where our statue fell down and broke all to pieces. So are they any closer to Yahweh than they were before? Not at all. They're not believing, even though all this has happened, they're not believing that Yahweh is real and Dagon is not. Okay, even though they have some evidence there. So there you go. That's a picture there, though, of the superiority of God in among this idol. Number 2, and this is the last point. It's a short chapter. His curse. His curse. Notice in verse 6, and this is the curse of God, the curse of Yahweh. The armies of Israel might be incompetent, cowardly, ill-prepared, ill-equipped, bad leaders all day long. But God is mighty. The people are doing what the people are doing. But God's going to do what God does. This is a big lesson for all of us. Follow God or try to do it your way. So they're trying to do it their way. And they were trying to do it their way in chapter 4 when they went out to battle. Look at verse 6. The hand of the Lord was heavy on the people of Ashdod. But that's repeated everywhere the ark goes over these next few verses. The hand of the Lord was heavy. By the way, whose hand was cut off a while ago? Dagon ain't got no hands. So his hand's not going to be heavy at all. It's weak and frail and decapitated. It's been severed. But God's hand has not been severed. God's hand is heavy and it's mighty. Look at what it says. He ravaged them and struck them with tumors. I don't know if you have a King James in front of you, it's often been translated as like a hemorrhoid. Piles, I think is the word, or I forgot what the word there is. It's been understood that way. Hemorrhoids, yeah. From the Hebrew there, it's boils, sores, tumors. That's what it is. Now, it could be hemorrhoids, and if you've ever had any experience with that, you know it could be pretty brutal, pretty rough go. But honestly, I think it's worse than that, because normally hemorrhoids don't kill you, but these things did. So there was, that it could be. That's a form of that word. That's one way of applying that term. But honestly, I think we're selling it short to call it that. I don't think Preparation H is going to fix this. This is a big, big deal. This is infection. This is boils. This is tumors. This is leading to death. And so both Ashdod and its territory, I'm sorry, we don't like talking about stuff like that in church, but, that's what the text says, right? Some of you out there are having a good time right now. All right. Verse 7, when the men of Ashdod saw how it was, they said, the ark of the God of Israel must not remain with us, for his hand is harsh toward us, and Dagon our God. And so you see just over and over, I don't want to be too repetitive here, but it goes to Ashdod. They're saying, get it out of here. He's treated Dagon bad. They still believe in Dagon, apparently. Therefore, they sent and gathered to themselves all the lords of the Philistines. We need the decision makers to come. What shall we do with the ark of the God of Israel? And here is the answer. Let the ark of God be carried away to Gath. I guess we'll see how the Gathites like it. So they carried the ark of the God of Israel away. So it was after they carried it away, the hand of the Lord was against the city. Same thing, same result. And I hope I'm getting excited here, because I just want to tell you is that the ark represents God, but they are continually over and over again rejecting God. They are not seeing that this God has the power to bring plagues. They are refusing to submit to the authority of Yahweh. So I'll come back to that in a minute, because that's really the main point of the whole chapter. So it was, look at verse 9. After they had carried it away, that the hand of the Lord was against the city with a very great destruction, and he struck the men of the city, both small and great, and tumors broke out on them. Look at verse 10. Therefore they sent the ark of God to Ekron. Oh, next stop, Ekron. Here we come, Ekron. Are you ready? So it was, as the ark of God came to Ekron, they cried out, saying, they have brought the ark of the God of Israel to kill us and our people. So word's getting around that wherever this thing is taken, bad stuff happens. You would think after a while we're starting to get the idea that maybe this is real. And since it's real, maybe we should believe in it. But you don't see that. Look at verse 11. So they sent and gathered together all the lords of the Philistines, more decision makers, more meetings, and said, by the way, these meetings are kind of ridiculous, aren't they? We had meetings in chapter 4, the Israelites were having meetings without consulting the will of God. Now we're having God in their midst, and we're having meetings on what to do with God. So they said, send it away. Let it go back to its own place so that it doesn't kill us and our people. For there was a deadly destruction. There it is. It's not just uncomfortable things that we go to Walgreens and get a remedy for. This is death. It's killing people. The hand of God was very heavy there, and the men who did not die, there it is, were stricken with the tumors, and the cry of the city went up to heaven. By the way, when I read that phrase earlier this week, I immediately thought about Nineveh, that's another example of a heathen city that their cries went up to heaven. And does God hear it? Yes, He will hear it. He will hear it. We still have the will of God to deal with. So listen to this. There at the end, look at the results. The results are really consistent everywhere it goes. And the results of the rejection of God is this: death, destruction, or death, affliction, like plagues, and despair, confusion. And I don't know if you've talked to someone who's been struggling with the decision of salvation lately, but when you do, what you're going to do is when they're without God, before they're saved and they're searching and trying and groping, and they've been faced with this issue of, I'm a sinner. And before they call on the name of the Lord, I've often experienced a person that's in despair. Lost people are in despair because they have no hope. These people have no hope. They have an answer in front of them, yet they have decided to reject. You don't hear them say, let's look into this. Maybe we need to talk to someone from Israel that knows more about the ark than we. You don't hear that. But what you see is, get it out of here, get away, move it, get it out of here. We don't want it because it's just bringing death and affliction to us. So keep that in mind. I'm going to say it one more time. The rejection of God results in death. This is just a principle from all throughout the Bible, really. Are you following me? The rejection of God brings death, it brings affliction, it brings despair. That's the results of rejecting God. And that's what they are experiencing. So we have a picture here of what happens when a person rejects God. It leads to death. So the Philistines here and Dagon in chapter 4, they seemingly defeat the Israelites and Yahweh. That's what it looks like at your first reading, and kind of, we're all, hopeless. The glory of the Lord has departed Israel. No, we have no hope. But the weakness, what we learn is the weakness was not with Yahweh. Yahweh's strength is full front on stage in chapter 5. Yahweh is cleaning house. Yahweh is winning the battles in chapter 5. And how many Israelites did he need? None. That many right there. Zero help. It would have been great if the Israelites would have been in one accord with God, on the same page, and they could have experienced victory that God would bring. But they didn't. And they lost. And God went on to fight the Philistines in the Philistine cities. And he struck them with tumors. Does it remind you of Egypt a little bit? Does it remind you of how in Egypt the heart of Pharaoh was turned eventually, and the people, but he struck them with plagues to get them to that point. And so we have God acting without the help of humanity. God is able. If you ever want to know, is God able? Yeah, he's able to do it without you. And I really feel like he will. He will accomplish his will with or without us. I would like to be a part. Raise your hand if you'd like to be a part of God's plan and God's victory. I want to be with God. I want to be alongside him. I want to participate in the victory that Jesus brings. Amen. And so right now you see God fighting his battle alone without their help. And the second thing I want to give you for application is this. Beware that you don't place God on the same level as other things in life that you love. I love some things in life. We a part of our culture. They're just ingrained in us. Things we do, things we enjoy doing. But dear friend, they don't come close, or shouldn't come close. Sometimes they do. That's my point. To Jesus. Jesus ought to be far and away above all the other things that we're fond of, that we like doing, that we love doing. He has to be number one. Right here, we see God was not number one at this time. He's not just that's the mentality of the idolatrous nations. Is they would capture this thing and put it in their little collection room, right? They have it's a collectible to them. Dear friend, Jesus is not a collectible. God is not something that you just add and you put on your shelf as a trophy and say, I got that, I got that, I got that, and I got God. That's got to go. That's got to go. And God has to be exalted and put up on the highest level because He is God. All right. So, God will fight His battles with or without us and win. Number two, God is not just another collectible that we add to our trophy case. And number three, coming back to our idea of rejection of God, it brings the same results: death, affliction, and despair. I want to talk about hell for a minute. I know a lot of people get uncomfortable, but this right here is a snapshot. I want to give you a snapshot of hell. I don't mean to scare you or anything. Sometimes people get scared. This might surprise you. The term hell is mentioned 12 times in the Bible. The word hell is only mentioned 12 times, while the term heaven is mentioned 600 times. I thought that was pretty interesting. Hell is 12 times in the Bible. Heaven is 600 times. Now, to be fair, there are other words in the Bible that reference hell, but they use a different term, like Hades, Sheol, the abyss. You'll find that in some of Job, places like that, and eternal fire. So it's not that hell is only talked about 12 times. I'm just telling you, the word hell is only in there 12 times, as opposed to 600 times for heaven. And heaven, the word heaven doesn't always mean where God is. Sometimes heaven means the atmosphere. Sometimes it means the celestial bodies. And sometimes it's talking about where God is and where we're going to be with Him. But listen to this. Hell. It's reserved for the wicked and those who reject God. I'm going to read a couple of scriptures. You know, we use that term hell in our everyday vernacular, and it's not right to speak of it lightly. It's a place. It's a real place that's reserved for the wicked and those who reject God. The Ekronites, the Gathites, the Ashdodites rejected God. That's where they will be. And along with all the other people that we know on an everyday basis that reject God, that's where they will go. That is a place reserved for them. Psalm 9:17 is probably one of the clearest verses regarding who it's for. Listen to this. Psalm 9:17 says, "The wicked shall be turned into hell, and all the nations that forget God." A rejection of God there is a place reserved for those who reject God. Revelation 14:9-11 says this about those who reject God and a reservation for the wicked. It says this: "Then a third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast in his image and receives his mark on his forehead or on his hand, he himself shall also drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out full strength into the cup of his indignation. He shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascends forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night who worship the beast and his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name." So it's a reservation for the wicked. And the second thing is this: God has authority over hell. God is the only one. It's actually Jesus has the authority over hell. Notice what this says in Matthew chapter 10 in verse 28. Jesus said, "And do not fear those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell." Well, that would be a fear for God. That would be a reverence for Jesus, his son. But also, as I mentioned, Jesus has He holds the keys of hell. Revelation 1:18 says, I am he who lives and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore. Amen. And I have the keys of Hades and of death. So Jesus has the authority over hell. I don't know about you, but if you want to avoid hell, you probably should go to the one who has the authority over who goes there. The third thing I want to tell you about hell is not only is it reserved for the wicked and those who reject God, God has authority over hell, but thirdly, it's characterized as an everlasting fire. Notice in Mark 9:43 and through 44, it says, if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. It is better for you to enter into life maimed rather than having two hands to go to hell, into the fire that shall never be quenched, where their worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. I don't believe, I mentioned a word this morning, and I was kind of looking up some things here about hell this week, and it's kind of on my mind. That's why I mentioned it. There's an idea, it's a false teaching, I believe, an annihilationism. I don't believe that the soul is annihilated. I believe that the soul goes on, and hell is an everlasting torment. Heaven is eternal. Hell is eternal. And dear friend, it's not a difficult thing to be saved, because God is the one who saves you. God is the one who saves you. If you are lost, if you are unsure, if you have questions about salvation, I'd love to talk to you about it. We'll get the Bible out, we'll pray together, we'll talk about these things. But dear friend, the bottom line is this: rejection of God results in death. I'm going to ask our musicians to come, and we'll sing a verse of invitation. Let's all stand tonight and sing together.